What I found so special from your philosophy is that you don't position yourself as a physical therapist and all the old school kind of stuff, but you also involve with strength training and you encourage people to lift weights.
I've never understood the disconnect between the training industry and the rehab industry. I'm a very just like exercise science, principles-based person.
Today is so noisy. Social media and all the media are literally bombarding us with trends and hacks and secrets and this supplement. And like, what about principles?
Fewer than 25% of Americans meet the bare minimum physical activity requirements. 75% of our population does not meet that.
Also, I'm gonna tell you a secret. There is no bad exercise. All right, Dr. Katie Dabrowski, is that okay?
That's perfect.
So thank you for being here. I think that we are going to have an amazing conversation. There is so many things I want to talk with you. What I found so special from your philosophy is that you don't position yourself as a physical therapist and all the old school kind of stuff, but you also involve with strength training and you encourage people to lift weights and gain some muscle, train normal, and don't avoid pain, but try to find you say your entry level, something you can do. So I would like you to present yourself to like someone who don't really know you, a little bit about your background, who you are, why you're here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm excited too. I even just off air the stuff that we were already talking about, just I was excited to start the conversation too. I think like we were discussing before air, I've never understood the disconnect between the training industry and the rehab industry. I'm a very just like exercise science, principles-based person. And if we want to make improvements, whether that's building more muscle mass from a training perspective or healing tissue from injury, principles of exercise physiology and exercise science apply. I don't see the difference. So it kind of just always was this understood thing that blending the worlds just made logical sense to me. So yes, my background is as a traditional physical therapist, if you want to just think of what my degree is. But before I became a physical therapist, I was very much involved in the neuroscience research world. Also had a long history of being an athlete and a college athlete. And I think there, maybe before I even realized it, is where the foundation was being laid of science is very important to me, and understanding that how we think of working with humans is a very scientific process, but at the same time there's an art to it. And there is a different side of it that's not only what the literature says, or that's not only what a textbook says. So it's this delicate balance of an art and a science. And then, in addition to that, my background in training as an athlete, my passion of just helping people realize how much more their bodies can do than they ever thought before. I just think that was kind of swirling underneath the surface before I ever became a physical therapist and ended up kind of combining all of the worlds. It just was this logical progression that I didn't even expect to happen. And now I feel very lucky that I get to work in a profession that allows me to like marry all of those things together that I'm passionate about. I think the rehab industry for a very long time has been separate from the training industry. And I think you and I are kind of trying to champion that and fix that, because I think we do more important work together than we could ever do separately.
For sure. And I agree with you 100%. And I like what you say in your philosophy of training is healthcare, because movement is important. And then like you and I, we talk about when someone has some injury or like they feel pain, or even sometimes it's just deconditioning. They are not in shape to, do daily stuff like kneeling or like lifting some heavy objects. What I try to do is to incorporate some movements that they can do, they can perform, and then from there, from that level, start improving. And something that I like that you say is the principles, because today is so noisy. Social media and all the media are literally bombarding us with trends and hacks and secrets and this supplement. And like, what about principles? What about the consistency? What about something that is a common denominator across all humans? we are not that different. We are different in, terms of characteristics, but at the same time, we belong to the human race. So the other day I was watching a video, one of my clients sent the video to me, and it's this lady talking about the female way of doing squats. I like, listen, I can see where this quote is coming from.
Yes.
And females are different, but like today, everything is just different. Everything is a secret, a hack. And like, what are you doing? Like, I teach squat to everybody around the same kind of way. And then, like, of course, technique it's gonna look at it a little bit different, but like principles are standard across all humans.
Yes, it's like the blessing and curse of social media, I think. We were talking about this a little bit too. I think the general public is more aware of the importance of exercise better than any other time in our lives. I growing up and being into strength training, it was never something that I was exposed to outside of the fact that I played a sport starting at a very young age, and I was lucky to be exposed to strength training very early on. Whereas now, in a really cool way, people are being exposed to it at their fingertips. You have people of all ages learning that strength training is important, which I think is a huge net positive. Like, that's an incredible thing. But then on the flip side of that, there's so much noise. And the way that I try to put it into perspective, fewer than 25% of Americans meet the bare minimum physical activity requirements that are recommended by the CDC and the World Health Organization, which is 150 minutes of aerobic activity per week and strength training twice a week. 75% of our population does not meet that. So now what I have a big issue with is all we're doing by adding so much noise of this is the right way to do this. And this is the way to do this if you're a woman. This is the way to do this if you're a man. This is the way to do this if you look like this. This is the way to do this, whatever, plug and play
Your hair
characteristic.
color.
Exactly. All we're doing
Yes.
is increasing the barrier to entry for exercise beyond already how high it is. If 75% of our population isn't doing the bare minimum, how dare we in this industry make it harder for people to have access to exercise and make it out to be this thing that has to be done in a very particular way, or you're doing it wrong, or has to look a very certain way, or it's not the right exercise. And I think that does a huge disservice to a much bigger problem that we have, is that we're simply too sedentary. And
Yeah.
the just outrageous amount of downstream health effects that come from not moving enough can't be understated. I always say, in the absence of trauma or red flags, so like a traumatic event, like you fell, you got hit by something, or red flags, like very scary, serious neurological stuff, for example, when people are experiencing pain. Most people's pain is due to asking their body something that it wasn't quite prepared to do yet. What does training do? It prepares
Exactly.
your body. So there's so many things that we encounter, I think, as humans in the pain realm that have a lot more to do with not preparing our bodies to tolerate the demands of life, compared to it just being something is inherently wrong with you, or you did the wrong exercise, or like anything like that. I think that is a huge issue in our industry.
Yeah, and 20%. That's awful. That's
Yeah.
terrible. And like you and I, we are in the same mission. We're gonna bring more people to the gym to lift weights. And I think, as you say, social media and like overall, like the way that we connect as a whole civilization today is really good. Now we know the benefits, not
Mhm.
only for vanity but also for health and
Yes.
longevity. But still, as you say, now almost everybody is an expert.
Mhm.
So we are lacking this respect for someone who spent years trying to refine a craft and learn, as you say, and trying to blend the scientific literature, the textbooks, and also the experience as a practitioner, also the client, because every single client is a little different. So you're gonna
Absolutely.
coach everybody the same. A female may look different than a male, and they have different responsibilities, lifestyles. We are not even getting into nutrition. So when people start this journey and say, "Oh, listen, doctors say that I'm done. Like my diabetes is close. I'm overweight. I don't feel myself capable of even walk.
Mhm.
So I want to join the gym." They go to the gym. They feel intimidated because they are weak. They don't know how to perform the exercises. Some people may look down at them because they are beginners, and then pick up a diet. Now everything is poisoning you. No fruits, no diet soda, you cannot eat dairy, you cannot eat bread because it's bad, no rice. Like you can name it, there is always someone saying something, and they become, as you say, afraid of like, I rather stay where I am, and at least I'm happy, not confused. So you see the same pattern of like being a little bit, mixed up with between complexity and I think that the marketing may benefit from that complexity, because if I complicate things for you and then I sell my solution, ta-da, like I'm in a different position. I can outperform others.
Absolutely, and I think, yeah, you're spot on. Like, I think that's a huge issue with all of it. It just becomes very complicated, and it creates this idea that fitness and nutrition and just getting a healthier lifestyle is a much bigger undertaking than it has to be. It's really interesting, because often what we see on social media is really, really hyper fit people becoming more fit. And that's kind of what we're exposed to when we think of like performance increasing and people strength training. We tend to just get exposed to the people who are already quite elite at it. And that also is overwhelming for people. Like, man, I'm nowhere near that
The
yet. Like,
comparison
yeah,
effect.
where do I start? But what's actually really cool, we have really excellent evidence that, somebody who goes from being completely sedentary and quite unhealthy to being just like a little bit more active,
Huge
that is
difference.
an exponential change in their long-term health
Yeah.
compared to somebody who is ultra fit getting a little bit more fit. And I think it's a shame because our messaging is often pushed more toward the ultra fit person wanting to get more fit versus the average human being who needs to get just a little bit more active for their life to dramatically change. And it doesn't have to be this complete overworking and overhaul of your entire lifestyle at first. You really can start gradually, and you can start at any time and make changes too. And I think that often gets overlooked. And that adds to just the frustration and confusion. Like, man, if I'm not already as fit as that person is, like, I guess
What I
what's the
am even
point?
trying. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the point?
That's a good message. Yeah, I can agree with that. Like I think people look up elite athletes and they try to emulate, copy their routine, or like as you say, trying to do the same diet, because they are in a quest of optimality. Of course,
Mhm.
you 1% of an elite athlete make a difference. Now, as you say, your neighbor who doesn't really lift weights, just doing twice a week, 60 minutes, and just eating more fruits and increasing the
It's
protein
a game
intake,
changer.
that could be a game changer. And you can improve your life like 40 years just doing that, very minimum. And then I think I've been blamed for being simple with my practice, but I'm trying to simplify their life. Like when a client came to me and say, Valentin, I want to train every day and I want to do your diet perfect when I'm weigh every single gram of food. I say, but like you are a lawyer and you have so many responsibilities, and like, is this realistic for you? Can you commit to that? Because I prefer to do something realistic,
Mhm.
and you can, earn some confidence, some self-esteem, and suddenly you increase the frequency. But let's start with something more realistic. 3 times a week, 60 minutes, and you don't have to weigh your food. Let's start with better choices.
Yes.
And like suddenly, yeah, this you can see the relief.
Mhm.
They look at me like, wow, are you sure, Valentin? Like 100%. Like, trust me, do this, simplify your life is my number one goal.
Well, and everything that they've probably been told thus far is they need to completely cut out an entire food group and train really intensely 7 days a week and, never sit at work again and all of these things that are just unrealistic. And that's what's so interesting, that again, like that you almost get like blamed for being simple.
Mhm.
Whereas I think a measure of a true expert of their craft is somebody who's able to take something that is incredibly complex, like human behavior, exercise science, psychology, motivation. Those are incredibly complex things. The ability to take that complexity and distill it into something that is simple, that any person can feel motivated to achieve is incredible. And I think that the simplicity is actually the important part of all of this because nobody has this just limitless time in their day as well as financial resources to live a lifestyle that is 100% perfect all of the time. I think it is our jobs. I think what makes us the best coaches we possibly can be is to be simple.
Yeah.
is to make the stuff that is overwhelming and inherently quite complex and kind of chaotic in all of this simple and digestible and actionable for the person in front of us. I think it's a skill that you can do that.
So let me tell you this reflection I have, and then you let me know if I'm wrong. But what I see that sometimes coaches does is they try to look intelligent, smart, sophisticated, advanced on the eye of just a client, normal person.
Mhm.
Now the complexity, as you say, is for the academia. You and I, we
Yes.
can discuss, we can spend hours like talking
Yes.
about complexity and topics and principles. Now for a client, like what are you trying to do? Like who are you trying to impress? You need to bring them clarity, and
Mhm.
that's the best way to coach someone. So for me, I see myself like I want to submerge, swim into this pool of complexity. I love that,
Mhm.
and then bring back practical tools for them to just apply to their daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think because this happens a lot in industries that maybe aren't taken seriously. So the training industry for a very long time has not ever really been taken seriously. It's getting a lot better because I think we have more exposure online than most other industries
Mm,
do actually right now. But we were just talking about this for a long time. If you were a trainer, people were like, "Okay, well what are you going to do next?" Or
yeah.
like as if it's a stepping stone of some sort of job until you actually like grow up and get a
Mm,
job. And same thing as physical therapists, in terms of if you think of historically like the hierarchy of the medical system, the physician is at the top, everybody else is below. So I think as physical therapists too, we often maybe feel the need to overcomplicate things to almost defend that, hey, we're healthcare providers
yeah, could
too.
be.
We have, skin in the game. I think a lot of it comes from an insecurity of our professions as trainers and coaches and rehab
Okay,
providers, as this like I got to show what I know.
we know stuff.
Exactly, like I'm important too, like I know what I'm talking about. So I think that is a
Yeah.
kind of an insecurity deep down in our industry as a whole where that stuff happens a lot.
Yeah, things are changing. Like I remember, like back in the day, like maybe like 8 years ago, I got a surgery, like my ACL, and physician was amazing. He performed the surgery, but like after the surgery, you come back to see him, and he was doing some stuff. My wife was there, and I was already involved into the fitness industry, like very deep, and I don't remember if I asked he say that to me, but like he said to me like literally, man, just drink water. That would be fine for you. And I was like expecting, some kind of like nutrition advices, insights, and like, listen, like just take with surgery. That would be better for
Yes.
you. Because
Yes.
he just recommend me to drink water.
Yes.
Now, don't get me wrong, he was amazing, but like we I think we need to now, as you say, show up
Mhm.
and start showing people more seriousness around how to do a diet, how to eat properly for even being healthy, or go to the gym, lift some weights, but do it with good form, good technique. Don't try to impress that girl
Mhm.
lifting more weight than you can. You like just do proper technique. That would be 100% better. So I think that's the moment now that we need to try to raise the standard and like show that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's where I think the general consumer of healthcare and fitness doesn't necessarily understand the different scopes of practice of medical providers. And I absolutely consider trainers and coaches under the umbrella of health and medical
Yeah.
providers, 100%. And I think most people just don't understand that physicians are absolutely important, 100%, but they don't have expertise in rehab. They don't have expertise in exercise. They don't have expertise in nutrition. It's not saying that they're not good at their jobs or their job isn't important, but we have to recognize what their knowledge is and not. An example I often give is just like you don't want me to perform your surgery as a physical therapist,
Exactly.
you should
Yeah.
not want your surgeon to give you rehab advice. We have different scopes. I don't know how to perform a surgery. I know about a surgical procedure, but I don't know how to do the actual surgery. A physician might know about just
Yeah.
general themes of a rehab process, but they do not actually conduct rehab. So you
No.
have to go to the appropriate person for the part of that scope of medicine that you're looking for. I just think people have never really been exposed to the differences of what practitioners know versus don't know. And that's, I think, as you said, we kind of have to step up more and really be clear of this is our scope. This is what our expertise is in. This is what we can offer. And we have to do it in an evidence-based, but also human-centered way.
Katie, when you say evidence based, what do you mean? Like, I know you have your own definition. So
Mhm.
can you like explain to me what evidence based practice means to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is another thing that gets convoluted. I think it's almost easier sometimes to say what it's not. Evidence-based does not mean that all you do is look at the literature for
Mhm.
every clinical decision that you might make. Whereas I think that gets convoluted and people think that if there's not a study that says exactly this, then you can't do it. Evidence is supposed to inform our decisions. Evidence is supposed to be a part of the decision-making process for how we go about clinical care, training, anything along that spectrum. There has to be evidence for efficacy of things and things that you're doing that are not just only rooted in your anecdotal experience. Simply because there is a hierarchy of evidence in terms of what we can, kind of safely extrapolate to the general public with higher certainty compared to not. So on that ladder of evidence, of hierarchy of evidence, experience and anecdote is in there, but it's on the bottom rung.
Exactly.
And so it
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's not important, but we can't hold the same weight of experience and anecdote that we can to a meta-analysis with 300,000 participants across 17
Yeah.
studies that you're getting a very informed decision from. However, we have to be able to kind of go up and down that ladder and appreciate each rung and know that they all have a place at the table. So that's where I think it gets confusing to people sometimes. The person in front of you isn't a PubMed study. And we need to be able to use that PubMed study to inform our clinical practice, but not rely on it 100%.
One thing that I see is the two extremes of
Mhm.
works for me.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
trust me, works for
Yes.
me. I know that not eating carbs for days is gonna work for me.
Yeah.
Like how that's supposed to work is it's just a fuel. You need to eat carbs.
Yes.
So that extreme is complicated because you get into a position in which you can really argue.
Yeah.
It's just your own experience,
Yeah.
important but not unique. And as you
Yes.
say, it's just we have so many other layers we can wait on, and it's not gonna be enough. And then on the other extreme, not only with practitioners who say, if you are not up to date, if you are not reading studies all day, you're done and you are gonna, make mistakes. But also the general population that happened to me, they think they know how to assess research. And like, listen, I'm not gonna say I'm the only one. I'm
Right.
science, and trust me, but at least I'm, a little bit more experienced. I conduct research myself. I read research most of the time, so I know how to, this, as you say, this population and this data can really apply with this client or this goal, or like when you say a research and when you see research, and as you say, this is only a piece of the puzzle, then we have a complete whole image. And people, and I think the press love this of like
Yes.
one glass of wine.
Clickbait. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
they love that. But general population, they see that and they're like, oh, Katie, like squats are bad for you, or like
Yeah.
whatever. And just listen, it's just one study. It doesn't really know the whole thing, the whole picture. As you say, principles are much more important. And then studies start accumulating, and then we may have a direction like, don't do more than 30 reps because it's not going to be enough for hypertrophy, or like
Right.
this and that. But like overall, you cannot just guide yourself one study. And then practitioners, they bring new studies and change their complete practice.
Yes.
What are you doing, man? Like, it's supposed to be just one study. You're supposed to incorporate that, assess, take some time, try by yourself, even better. And then, oh, this works. This new
Yes.
supplement, it may work. I'm gonna try, I'm gonna use it. But change your complete career just because single study, it doesn't seem right for me.
Yeah, I agree with all of what you've said. I think you're exactly correct in that the general public, but I would also argue, unfortunately, a lot of practitioners are not as skilled at actually evaluating the research and the literature that they're reading and being able to make kind of an informed hypothesis from it. I think a lot of people also don't understand the difference in kind of scientific rigor across types of studies, like a case study of one person compared to a systematic review that compares dozens of studies with, tens of thousands of people. Those are very different levels of evidence
Yeah.
and things that we can confidently kind of make assumptions about. But often just the way that we read literature as a public, it's treating it all the same. That this
Yes.
one person in a case study, that really dictates how now the entire industry should work, compared to, again, these big studies that are just a lot more scientifically rigorous.
Solid.
And exactly. So I think that's a huge part of it as well. Or, you want to read the last sentence of an abstract and think that you understand the study.
Yeah.
It's very complex and it's very different than that. So that's a huge part of it. Absolutely. And that's where, again, I talk about this a lot, like the art and science of what we do. Training and rehab absolutely needs to be backed in evidence. We have to have a scientific understanding of why we're doing the things that we're doing. But at the same time, every single person you encounter is going to be very different and is
Yes.
not a textbook and cannot follow a recipe or a protocol that worked for somebody else who had the exact same diagnosis or the exact
No.
same thing. It's going to always be different. So I think coaches and clinicians, we have a really unique responsibility to be scientists, but also artists,
Yes.
and to blend the two worlds together. And I care about physiology, but I care about psychology just as much. And I think that's a very important thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And something that I like to do when I explain this to my clients is explain the concept of the weight of the evidence, because sometimes as a science communicator, I want to defend science. We is our tool, so I want to defend science
Of
with
course.
with good arguments, of course, rational arguments.
Yes.
And I try to explain to them, like they say to you, like like I found a study for almost every position, and I say, wait a minute, like science doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
Like you do 100 studies, and then for dairy or milk, they're gonna find a study who say dairy cause cancer, or artificial sweeteners are a very hot topic.
Yes.
So, but this is a single study showing cancer in rats, whatever. And like, wait a minute, like we have 100 studies. We assess the studies, as you say, meta-analysis, systematic reviews. Most of the studies are pointing that direction, like they are safe and dairy is good for you overall if you have any intolerance, so you can eat it. And then one or two studies are pointing that direction. Doesn't mean that they are not valid, as you say. They're not important. We are going to take that into account. But science, or at least the scientific method, has some flaws. We still have to take conclusions with some grains of salt, and then assess and see ourselves what's the weight of the evidence. So if we have a lot of studies pointing that direction, like protein intake, let's go higher, better than going 0.8.
Right.
Let's go a little higher. So we can kind of like navigate that process. And as you say, being a little bit more artist when we took the decisions of like, all right, scientific evidence is a theme, but it's not going to take my practice to the point in which if I don't have a study, I don't try nothing.
Right. And that's where, and not everything has to always have a study either, right? Like if we
No.
think of principles of strength training, like principles of progressive overload, supercompensation theory, those are very well established theories. I don't need a 2026 study to tell me that progressive overload is a good thing. The body of evidence that already exists for these very these very foundational principles of exercise science exist. And that's okay. So I think that also gets confusing of like, well, where's the study that shows you this? That's most recent. And we also we have to remember that these fields have been expanded upon for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of just foundational understandings that we have that we can pull from that don't necessarily have to come from a randomized controlled trial that happened yesterday.
Exactly.
And that's where I think just saying you're evidence-based, it's very nuanced beyond, I think, what maybe people initially thought about it. And I just think as well, if we existed in a world where we only treated people like participants in a study, we would lose the very important human connection aspect of what we do. And just because there might be a study that says that this exact protocol is the perfect way to treat this injury, but I have a person in front of me who doesn't like it, okay, then it's not the perfect protocol for them.
Yes.
So that's what I think often gets overlooked. You can have the perfect answer in the literature, but then you have the very just reality in front of
In
you.
front of you,
If it
and
doesn't
you are not
work,
reading it.
exactly. If
Mhm.
it doesn't work for that person, then it's not the perfect study.
Yeah,
And I think we forget that. We try to put humans into a box to kind of
doesn't work that
fit
way.
the conclusion of a study that we read, whereas what matters infinitely more, is it important to this person? Does it
Mhm.
help their goal? Does it help their identity? Does it bring them joy? Do they feel safe? Do they feel heard? All of that stuff matters more than what any study could
Mhm.
tell me about what to do with that person.
100%. And like, I'm just gonna read this story because you've been in Italy. I love to read a lot about history, and I was reading Leonardo da Vinci's
Mhm.
biography, and the author says something that resonates so much with me because he say like, Leonardo da Vinci was a genius, and he say like he was an artist or a scientist, and literally below he say like if you ask that question to him, he would understand the question.
Yeah.
You are both.
Yeah, how could you be one or the
You
other?
cannot. You need to bring both. And when you become that blend is when I think you achieve this, as you say, this uh, superior state of understanding, not get biased by one or the other. Like
Mhm.
just you can observe both and get an amazing answer for your client just in front of you.
100%. I think part of our job is to one of the, I think the most important parts of our job is to establish that human connection. And you can't establish human connection if you are only thinking like a scientist. You just can't. And I think that needs to be something that we become experts at navigating and having, both of those hats kind of are always on instead of one or the other.
Yeah. So, Katie, how long have you been in Miami?
This year is actually my 10th year in
10
Miami.
year decade.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Do you do you see that the Miami fitness industry is sometimes rewarding a little bit more the show, the performance, the entertainment more than the seriousness on the professional side of our craft?
Potentially. Yeah, that's a very interesting question because I have a lot of experience with traveling and teaching seminars in other places in, LA and New York and Chicago and Denver and all these other cities. And it's interesting to kind of see the way that the fitness industry is received in each of those places. Like in New York, for example, I think being in the fitness industry is seen as a lot more serious as it is here. And I don't necessarily think one is right or wrong. It's just an interesting observation. And I think something with Miami too, we live in a beautiful place where
Mhm,
part of, I think, the draw of the fitness industry here is maybe more on the aesthetic side because
mhm.
of that. And again, I don't think that that's inherently right or wrong, but I think it does shape the landscape a little bit differently of maybe how seriously the industry is taken or maybe why people get into the industry in the first place. So it's just an interesting reflection on Miami. But what I think as a whole, which has been very cool, is just I think there's more appreciation of the fitness industry every year, in my opinion. I think it's becoming more of a career option that people can see versus like, oh, you're just a trainer. What are you going to do next?
Mhm.
Like we talked about earlier. And I think that people are understanding it's a career that you can actually have a living and be successful at. And I think it's also something that the general public is caring about fitness more. So people's lifestyle is a lot more wrapped around fitness. When I first moved to Miami, maybe it was also because I was younger, but it felt like the scene was a lot more about partying. And
Yeah,
now it feels like there is at least more of a fitness undertone than there
it
was
is.
before. I mean, the fact that events exist now that are pop-up events based on getting together to do fitness, to go on a cold
Yeah.
plunge, and to drink coffee, for example, is so different from when I moved to Miami. And
Drinking and
yeah, like
partying.
kind of the only way that you were socializing was if you were drinking. And so been a very interesting
Yes.
shift compared to coming here in 2016, where it was like, if you're not going to happy hour, then you're not hanging out with
Yes.
people. So I think it's been interesting to just see how the industry is evolving. I would hope and I would like to see it continue to be an industry that's getting more and more respect and that we're taken more seriously and that it's more, based in scientific principles over time,
we
hopefully.
have we have a long
We have a
time.
long way to
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
Yeah.
what's your perception on being in Miami?
So I've been in Miami for 5 years so far, so half your time. And as you say, I'm seeing this trend of becoming more popular, but also on the net is a positive. I see more gyms, more
Mhm,
people working out. I think that Miami is a very fit
mhm.
city. A lot of vibes around that. People are very, very jacked. Like you can
Yep.
see, like people around they're in great shape.
Yeah.
So tourists when they came, they say like, "Oh my God, they want to go to the beach." Like everybody looks amazing.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm in the business. It's important because people are asking for help.
Mhm.
I wanna look like them,
Yeah.
and they are asking like, "Help me." Okay, I got you. I can do that in a sustainable, safe way because
Mhm.
that's also important part of the framework.
100%.
And I see that more common people are asking for help, more gyms, more practitioners, more coaches. That if you can excel, they are gonna notice. Like, oh, go see Katie because she knows, you know.
Mhm.
So that part is important. On the other side, I think that also places for just performance and entertainment, which is
Mhm.
cool, but they are not gonna give you results.
Right.
So for me, I came from a body recomposition background. So what I like to do with the body is just improve physique. So do you want to lose some pounds of fats? Do you want to gain some muscle? Let's train with weights. Let eat properly. You're gonna do the process. Now, what I see, and I think relate with what you mentioned, is that people are now engaging with fitness not only for appearance, which is amazing, but also for health.
Mhm.
And they know now I need to lift weights. Yoga is not enough. Pilates is not enough. I need to
Yes.
lift weights. So now they are getting involved
Which
with
is such a
weights.
change. Like that and that's a really good point that I didn't even consider when you first asked the question, but that's spot on. Like I think of, you know, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, especially I think about women. When women would come in to see me and we're thinking and talking about training, it's a lot more of this focus on wanting to get skinny, wanting to lose weight.
Thin.
Be thin, exactly. And now I think one of the coolest things ever that's starting to happen is I get women who come in and say, "I want to build my bone density." Like, we
Oh,
were never hearing that before,
that's
or, "I wanna
crazy.
learn about plyometrics because I know it's important for my bones." And my mind is blown that
Yeah.
people are asking these questions, or women saying, "I'm in my 30s now, but I know that muscle mass is important for perimenopause. I wanna start strength training." And I get, like, goosebumps about it because whereas before I felt like I kind of constantly had to have these conversations of, "No, lifting weights isn't gonna make you bulky. No, it's okay. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
promise it's going to be fine. You're not gonna accidentally get too muscular. It
No.
doesn't happen. I've been trying for a long time." Like it's you don't
Yes.
accidentally get too muscular. And to almost defend strength training and say, "No, it's good for you." And now we have people who are literally coming to us asking for it. I think that's incredible. And I think that's a positive that we have to highlight a lot because that's dramatically changed
Yes.
from when we first started in the industry.
Yeah, that's true. And also, what I like to include, what I like to flip the conversation is like, would you like to do a pull up? Would you like to do push ups one day? Or like, do you
Mhm.
like to do like a deep squat? And they look at you like, or sometimes they get to the gym, like they see, Sophie doing 10 pull ups back and back, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, she can do that. Like, yeah, and of course, you can do it.
It's a reframe that they
You
never
can
even thought was
train. She started
possible.
with nothing. She
Yeah.
did the journey. So they see that and like, oh, that's awesome. And I try to explain to them, let's say push-ups. They see push-up just as an exercise and say like, no, 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 no. Listen, if you fall one day, what supports you from injury or
Yeah.
fracture or whatever is your arms and your chest. If you wanna, let's say don't get me wrong, but like if somebody is getting to you or whatever, and like you need to stand up for yourself, is your
Yeah.
arms being strong. And like as a female, I suppose that you are vulnerable most of the time. So you want to stay strong and try to protect if someone trying to, to be invasive or like,
Yeah.
and like, what are you going to do if you are not strong? Your upper body is not strong enough. You cannot defend yourself and they're going to see that you are weak.
Yeah.
And as you say, there are so many components now that like, oh my gosh, I need to lift weights.
Yes, I think that's a very cool thing and something that I don't know if I ever expected to change in the way that it did because I felt like so much of my
Yeah.
career was almost defending strength training for women and convincing people that it was appropriate and the good thing to do. And that's flipped a lot, which is very cool. I also think too, I don't there's this just societal expectation and this messaging of as we age, there's just this inevitable downward spiral, and you're just gonna keep getting, worse and worse and worse, and everything hurts and everything sucks, and your quality of life continues to just constantly diminish. And I think what people don't realize is that all of that is actionable and contingent upon how you treat your body.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
the average person truly doesn't conceptualize the fact that aging is not an inevitable downward spiral. These things don't happen if you maintain your muscle mass, if you keep your aerobic system healthy, if you expose your body to fast things, to difficult things, to slow things, to changing direction, if you expose your body to all of the things that it should be exposed to continually throughout your lifespan in a dosage that's appropriate for where you are along your lifespan journey, these things don't inevitably happen. And I think that's a very big misunderstanding that exists. Like, oh, well, I'm just getting older, so that's why this sucks. Well, no, there's a lot to do to buffer the effects of aging. And I think that's another very important, and I'm hopeful that that's a continual shift that we see as well, where people understand that the pain or the issues that we associate with aging are not 100% guaranteed no matter what.
Mm.
They are absolutely modifiable. They are absolutely things that you can work and fight against by increasing your muscle mass, by having a healthy aerobic system, by being able to do things that are powerful, by being able to absorb for your force when you land from a jump and take off from a jump. All of those things are qualities that help you age in a way that doesn't mean it's just going to get worse and worse and worse every year.
Yes, yes, agree. We'll talk about pain, but first I wanna mention something about that because also what I see is like a trend of people used to think about losing weight as the magical solution for everything, but now they're starting seeing muscle mass and fat as tissues that they have implications in your body.
Mhm.
So if you can kind of like get to a normal body weight, like healthy body weight, which it could be a range, but on average, you increase your muscle mass and you lower your adipose tissue
Mhm.
percentage on your body, you will get to a better place because those has implications on
Yes.
how you function as a person, even walking, even doing, jogging or normal activity. So what I see now is that people are getting a little bit more interested or like, okay, like I need to get into the gym.
Mhm.
So my question for you is going to be the following. Strength training is like a big umbrella. Like
Mhm.
everybody knows now, like strength training is important. All right. Now I get to the gym and I see a guy doing a boss to ball squat and with some balls, it kind of like a Cirque du Soleil stuff.
Yes.
All my life, I'm being battled with that because for me, it's just so annoying. Like, what are you like? You can do so many good things with that time and energy. Do you agree with me that if we have Jenny twice a week,
Yeah.
60 minutes.
Yep.
Are you gonna do bosu balls? Or
If I have Jenny every day for 60 minutes, I'm not gonna do Bosu.
that's even worse. Oh my god.
So yeah, and I want to touch on the first thing that you mentioned of just this shift. Before I answer that really excellent question, the shift of understanding the importance of the tissue of muscle mass versus fat mass, and it not just being about losing weight. The way that I try to explain it to people is muscle and fat are organ systems. They are active organ systems, and they do very different things. Muscle mass, if we think of it as an organ system as we should. It regulates hormones. It's a glucose sink. It's what helps us regulate our insulin from just a chemical and a hormonal perspective. It also helps us buffer cortisol and stress. We know there's an inverse relationship between testosterone and muscle mass and cortisol. Chemically and hormonally, it's very important. But then also physically, it's very important if you just think logically about it. If I think of a knee, for example, let's think of a client. A lot of our clients have knee pain when they go downstairs. If we think just physiologically about this, if we don't have enough contractile tissue, which is muscle mass, which is tendons, tissues that their job is to lengthen and absorb the force of your body weight, of gravity, of anything else that is added to your body weight and gravity to protect your joint. If we don't have enough of that, your body weight, gravity, and any other weight on your body is going to non-contractile tissues, to tissues where their job is not to absorb force in the same way that muscle or tendon tissue is. It's going to your joint. It's going to your bones, your ligaments, the non-contractile structures like a meniscus in your knee, for example. And you're not able to adequately distribute the force of the load of your body to the muscle mass. You're going to have discomfort because the tissues that are supposed to cushion you, you don't have enough of. So chemically and hormonally, very important, but also just physically, like what the structure of your joint is and how much contractile tissue you have to support you is incredibly important. And I think that is hopefully being better understood now. It's not just about weight loss. It's the composition of what tissues and what organ systems are supporting your body. So I think that's important. And then to speak to the Bosu ball question, or we could say this about so many things, very, corrective exercises or kind of mobility drills or things that are quite on the lower level end of the spectrum. I think about this a lot. The way I think of what I want my session to be with a client is how can I make this the most physiologically important hour of their life? How can I do things that move the needle the absolute most to create true tissue adaptation, which means I have to do something with a great of enough stimulus to actually make their physiology change? That is my number one priority for a session with somebody. If an exercise that I'm giving them isn't held to a great enough standard and it actually isn't doing that stuff, it's not appropriate. So if you're doing an exercise that requires like a circus effort that you can't actually load it enough to create tissue changes, it's not a good enough exercise. So that's, I think, very important with, exercise selection isn't always the most important variable because you can get a lot of things done if you just think more of stimulus instead of perfect exercise. But there also is an important level of scrutiny that needs to be put in. Like, is the thing that you're doing so complicated that you've now missed the mark on what the actual goal of the exercise was? I think about it. You see people, standing on a Bosu ball on one leg doing bicep curls. If you want to grow your biceps,
even worse, they are holding one dumbbell here and like, what are you doing?
Exactly. If you want to grow your biceps, you need to have a level of stability that you can actually, therefore, do something heavy enough that isn't limited by your balance to actually do enough work for your biceps. So I think that flashy stuff looks cool. It's cool to be good at something that looks hard to do, but once we get past maybe like how cool it looks, we just have to think.
It looks difficult, but in the wrong way. Difficult, like give me full range of motion. Stretch your biceps. Hold it for a second and then go up without getting your elbows back. And then do it again and again until you get close to failure. And like, that's difficult, no?
It looks simple, but it's very difficult and it's very appropriate to actually get the goal of what you're doing.
That's what I mean when I say that I'm being blamed as a simple practitioner. But like, what I do is that I try to compound in a session what exercise you can perform are simple and move the most amount of muscle in the same time. Because you need to, take the most of that session. So now, if you start doing a circuit and then like so many exercises and then like they're complicated, the brain, it gets crazy. So I agree.
It's probably something that you run into as well. I'm sure like when you have to remind people to rest between sets because they're kind of used to this go, like circuit style training, which is, again, it's not bad or wrong, but if your goal is muscle hypertrophy and strength, you need to rest. If our goal of the session is not cardiovascular improvements, it's building muscle mass, it's
Yes.
building strength, then you need to adequately rest so your physiology has time to replenish to be able
Yes.
to do the thing again. So I think that's another part of it too. There's this misconception of like, I need to be so out of breath that I'm almost vomiting to make my workout session good enough. And if you're trying to build strength and muscle
Yeah.
mass, look at power lifters. I
Yeah.
mean, if you see somebody who's really doing like heavy sets of 3 for squats, they're resting 3 to 5 minutes between sets. And that's because the goal of that session is to build strength. And the other stuff, the rushing between sets, is going to diminish that goal.
Yeah, but Katie, if you are, let's say, people look more like bodybuilders for aesthetic than powerlifting,
Totally, totally.
and I think there is a common misconception around short-term rest that
Mhm.
came from all ages kind of
Yes.
stuff for hormonal response. That is
Yes.
already done. Like we know now that if you rest very little, like you can perform, and then
Yes.
your sets go down like
Spot
crazy,
on.
and your performance, but they feel good.
Yeah.
They feel like they've been accomplishing something.
Yeah.
And like something I try to experience in my practice is that I explain, like, let the machine rest
Yeah.
so you can perform.
Yeah.
And then if you don't need the rest, you are not training hard enough.
Exactly. It's a measure for the quality of your session.
Yes.
At one spot on.
100%.
Absolutely. And I also just think that most people really equate their idea of a good workout with like feeling terrible when they've finished.
Mhm.
And the one thing that we know beyond rep ranges, rest, like proximity to failure, exercise selection, the thing that is the thing that we really have to think of the most in terms of what predicts success in terms of like long-term adherence to exercise and long-term success with exercise is consistency. So
100%.
if you are training at a 10 out of 10 effort every single training session, you can't possibly be consistent. You're going to be
No.
so exhausted that you can't train for the next 3 days. And then you have to start from scratch again. And I think people have a really hard time like modifying and distributing their effort over a week of training, a month of training, a year of training.
Exactly. A lifestyle.
They think that right now, this very moment, I need to like kill myself in
Yeah.
this training
No.
session. And I try to help people think of, I want you training for decades, for the rest of your life. I want you to train in a way that the volume and intensity is adequately and smartly distributed so that you can get up tomorrow and do it again. And I think that's a big misconception. People think that people like us in the industry, oh yeah, but you guys must train for like 3 hours a day and you're like gonna throw up by the time you're done with it.
No.
And when in reality, I'm chasing minimum effective dose. I'm
Yes.
chasing what truly is kind of the floor of what I can give somebody that still gives them an adaptation, but doesn't exhaust them and doesn't kind of ruin their next day.
It's like life itself. Like
Yeah.
you don't work your ass all the way
Yeah.
to burn out every day. You work, you enjoy what you do. Once you're tired, you rest, you eat something, you
Yeah.
relax, and then you come back next day with, again, fresh.
Yeah.
Training is the same. You plant the seed, you let the tissue heal, recover, adapt, and then again and again. Now, as you say at the very beginning, like marketing doesn't really go well with consistency.
Can't sell that. Yeah.
That's why it's so hard to hold principles. And that's something I've been struggling a little bit in Miami. Like I've been kind of like placing myself on this island of principles and consistency and trying to be honest and professional, trying to uphold some kind of integrity.
Of course.
And then people are seeing like, but Valentin, that coach told me like in 4 weeks I can become. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna come back in 4 weeks, saying to me like I didn't work.
Yeah.
So good question, and I think you're gonna have a lot of insights here because you came from the pain background. You say something about sustainable effort. You say that if we know now if you train too close to failure or failure point, fatigue is gonna raise so hard, it's unsustainable. But then too far is also not good. We need a range. Like
Mhm.
let's say if we agree 2-3 reps in reserve,
Yep.
it's a good spot. Now, when you see someone performing an exercise and they say to you, oh, like I have one more, like, no, you got more. You know you got more. Now, what gets into the way, I think, is the suffering, is the discomfort, is a hard set. We all know that it's gonna be intense. Now, how you approach that path of telling them like it's gonna be okay, push a little bit further, one more rep, whatever, like explain to them that they are not gonna get up, injured at the end of
Mhm.
the set. It's just normal things to experience.
Yeah, that's always a challenge because I think a lot of people incorrectly assume that exercise, if they do it too hard or if they do it in quotations the wrong way, it's just this kind of fast track to injury and pain. And that's another thing that we know is not the case. Pain and injury is incredibly complex, and there isn't one thing that leads to pain and injury. It's not purely mechanical, it's not purely biomechanical. There's so much nuance to it. What does protect against pain and injury is robustness. And we can define that robustness as, being like having the physical capabilities in your body to withstand stress of life. So that's something that we have to be mindful of. Like the way that we actually kind of protect against this stuff is doing the hard stuff.
Hmm.
And there's an entry point for everybody, right? Like I think that's something important for us to consider because we are kind of the weird people who like training so much that we made it our jobs. And the average person just doesn't have that same relationship with exercise. So I think what's very important for us is to, yes, understand that the person we're working with probably has like 15 more reps in the tank when they say they have 3, but their comfort level with discomfort in training is much different than ours is. So it's a nuanced thing. We have to really kind of ease people into understanding that they can do more than they thought possible.
Yes.
And that's where I think sometimes creating like fun rep ranges or scenarios where it almost happens without us telling them. Like I like using like density sets, for example, where I'll give a timer. You have 10 minutes to accumulate as many rounds of this exercise
Uh-huh.
for 8 reps as possible. And that's a really cool way to add a competitive drive in and make somebody do a lot more
Challenge
work.
multiple times.
Yeah. And without them even knowing they're doing it, because now they've just been given a task that they're trying to achieve. And so I think it's part of our job to find what makes the client in front of us tick.
Yeah.
Find what makes them feel comfortable with a little bit more discomfort because we are, again, we're kind of the weirdos. We're really
Yeah, we
comfortable
are.
being uncomfortable, and most people are not. And that's okay. And we can kind of help them navigate it.
Yeah. Well, this is a very good example to portray this scenario in which some evidence, some scientific evidence is good, but also the actual client performing the set. Because we know from some research that the gene goer, the orange gene goer, stays away from 7, 8 reps in reserve at least per
At
set,
least,
maybe
yeah.
more, but at least 7, 8. So you know that if you have this client in front of you, it's gonna stop far away. Now, if we track every single week, like okay, last week you did 15 reps with 50 pounds, and you say you were 2 reps in reserve because
Hmm.
you say that we're gonna try going up, and then you go up again and you go up again until eventually you try your limits.
Yeah.
So now today is your peak week, whatever, you're gonna try your best. Give
Hmm.
me as many reps as possible with 90 pounds. And then you try and you did 20. So now you realize nothing happened. You
Yeah.
challenge yourself. There is no injury and you feel awesome.
Yeah.
And suddenly you are kind of like pushing your limits up. And as you say at the very beginning, seeing what your body is capable of.
Yeah. I think a big part of it too is we can constantly just say and tell people and try to explain this, but I think the best case scenario is if we kind of slow drip experiences where people find this stuff out along the way on their own. Like I think about it as it's very important for us to educate, of course, but that can fall on deaf ears. I can tell somebody over and over and over again, you're still really far from failure. You're still nowhere near where we need to be. But until I put them in a scenario where it just kind of happens, that's when it clicks. And so
Yeah.
I think part of our job too is to create an environment and an experience that almost like violates their expectation. So somebody who is scared of exercise, somebody who is scared of doing a movement that challenges their low back muscles and they think that it's going to make them hurt. Instead of us telling them that it's not and trying to convince them, I think it's also important for us to create an environment where it happens and they're like, "Whoa, I can't believe I thought that was going to be scary and it wasn't."
No.
Like that's very powerful and contextually for their brain and their psychology, that's going to matter more than me telling them time and
Yeah.
time again, deadlifting is safe. It's okay if you feel your low back. It's okay if you do this versus putting them in a scenario where it happens and they surprise themselves. Like that is very, very valuable.
Yeah, folks, I'm gonna tell you a secret. There is no bad exercises. There is not like if you see guys saying that in the internet, like it's not gonna be okay. Like you can, as you say, there's entry levels, entry points for everybody. You
Mhm.
can probably perform. Sometimes it's the dose. They are not doing the right dose, so they are trying to lift more weight than they can.
Correct.
And once you teach them, like let's cut the weight a little bit and do good form, good full range of motion. As you say, expose the joint. They feel better. They feel the tension better because it gets better to the tissue. So suddenly they are learning a lesson of like, don't try to compete with anybody. Like just go do your own thing. And suddenly you are challenging yourself. And yeah, I think that's a nice way to end the conversation.
Absolutely.
It's been amazing. Like Dr. Katie, where can people know more about you, follow your stuff? If they're in Miami.
Yeah, Instagram's a great place. Old Bull Athletics is the facility that I co-own. We have 3 locations in Miami, and we're a hybrid strength and conditioning and rehab facility where we kind of purposefully blend the worlds. Our goal would be if you walked into Old Bull, you wouldn't know who was there doing rehab or doing training, because we firmly believe that they exist on the same spectrum. So Old Bull Athletics on Instagram is a great place to see what we're doing. And then my Instagram, Katie Dabrowski, is another great place to
Cool.
see what's going on.
You are a little bit more down south.
Yes, yes, we're in Coral Gables and Pinecrest, so a little bit more
Pinecrest.
south, but who knows where we'll be
Oh,
next.
now. So, like, if you are in Miami area, we are located in Wynwood. CV Studio is a strength training studio. We specialize in body recomposition. So if you want to receive coaching in person, you can book a consultation, come to studio. We assess your body, your goals. We talk about your lifestyle, and we prescribe some nice programs so you can start your transformation. And as Katie say, you can start your journey
Yes.
lifting weights with good form, good technique, and start eating properly so you can feed your body and get amazing results without all the complexity that today
Yes.
exists in the social media era.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.